the council work session. Roll call, please.
Mr. Boson?
Here.
Mr. Amos? Mr. Morrissey? Okay. Mr. Amos?
Here.
Mr. Morrissey? Mrs. Klein?
Here.
Mr. Foyce? Mr. Greider?
Here.
Mrs. Jewin?
Here. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Motion to approve the agenda for the city council work session and the minutes of the August.
There are no minutes.
No minutes. Okay, so
minutes.
just approval of the agenda for today's meeting.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we have an agenda. And the purpose of this work session today is to get a discussion of the police department strategic plan, as will be presented by our police chief, Joel Fitzgerald. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Chief.
Good afternoon to you all. Dr. Joel Fitzgerald, Chief of Police for the City of Waterloo. Thank you to all that are in attendance as well. I wanted to give you a high-level overview of our strategic planning within the department. A lot of work went into this. I'd like to thank my assistant, Major Joe Leibold, and all the members of the command staff and the department that have had some say in what went into this planning. I'd like to thank the community members as well that had some say in the planning, because we tried to make it representative of all the input that we received. Considering it was a COVID era, it's kind of hard to put together in a true, how can I put it, in the truest sense of the word, focus groups when we weren't allowed to gather. But given all the information that I gathered along the last year or so, I was able to put together a plan that I think is representative of all the internal and external feedback that I've received. So without further ado, I'll move into the plan. Overall, this department overview will have or consist of several different things. You're going to see that it includes the community feedback, some feedback I received from council, feedback I received from members of the department. It meets the thresholds given by the PERF report back in 2015 and the DOJ report done on the department. You'll see that there were things that were not implemented that could have been implemented, and I have done so moving forward. You'll see that the organizational chart will change a little bit. It's still relatively flat, but I'm in the process of including a change that will affect Major Leibold's position. There also has been a police lieutenant who's been dedicated to being the neighborhood policing coordinator, which is new. The detective division has been shuffled a bit. I've moved VCAT into the detective division to facilitate the intelligence sharing that we needed at that level. And you'll see, pending the positional changes, not only will Major Leibold potentially move to assistant chief, but I've asked for another police captain. There's a new organizational focus in this department, one of internal accountability, which I think you'll see is a resounding theme here. This isn't to say that any member of the police department is not doing what they are supposed to do. I believe that the members of our department are working very, very hard and have been misrepresented in a sense multiple times, but I'll go into more of that as we go along. The plan will demonstrate the amount of innovation, the creation and execution of a document, a workable document that we'll be able to follow for the next 5 years, and to see this department go from good to great. Moving along. I'm going to move this up here.
I'm sorry, Chief, would you email this to us so we have it in front of us, or do we just have to go off the screen? Because I can't read it, half of that.
Okay.
What was that, sir? Okay, thank you.
So the
Sure.
But
The
I
thing
think, in direct response, you're gonna be getting a copy of this to us in the near future, right?
what I intend on doing this evening is getting you a draft copy of the strategic plan. Mind you, it's a draft. There's still some proofreading and other things that need to go into this, but overall, the content, the specific content in the document detailing the goals, the direction of the organization will be very, very easy to understand and worth discussion.
Great, thank you.
You'll notice the first titled slide here, the undisputed truth about police morale. Well, this was necessary because police morale is something that every strategic planning document deals with. The planning document's inclusive of feedback that's received by actual people that are working every day as police officers currently within our department. So that planning, those factor in to what the department saw from the day I walked in the door as things that needed to be changed, needed to be implemented, or quite frankly, we needed to procure to make their jobs easier. So when you're talking about strategic planning, anyone worth their salt will tell you that when you talk to your people, when you glean this information, you add it into a plan and you move forward from that point on, with the idea that you want to hit each one of those goals and action items, and you make people responsible for doing such, and this plan does that. As you see here, I have to adjust my glasses. The morale post-George Floyd, I think, is the biggest thing that's come up lately. And I linked several stories, several documents, just by doing one Google search. This is a Google search that I put in, and the parameter was police department morale post-George Floyd. Just that simple. Not Waterloo Police Department, not Sacramento Police Department, Philadelphia Police Department, not Cedar Falls or Cedar Rapids Police Department, but Police Department. I did it on 10 a.m. on 9/2/2021, and it yielded about 10,200,000 results in 0.55 seconds. So of those 10,200,000 results, I gave you the first 9, and the first 9 have a litany of things to do with everything that our department's accused of being, and that's, morale being low, and George Floyd having no effect on the Waterloo Police Department, and it simply being a matter of a leadership change, which it is not in any police department, not this soon. I'm going to spare you clicking on each link. I will advise counsel that since you have the PowerPoint document, you'll be able to control and click into the link itself and bring up each one of these stories, each one of the first 9. And I'd encourage you to also put the search parameters in. Mr. Bozen, it looks like you're trying to click into that.
Well,
It's
because
control.
I can't.
It's
because
control.
It's not the same document that I'm looking at.
Okay.
He says it's on, he's on page 3.
Oh, I understand that, but it's
So
not the
you
same
can
document that I
click
have
into
here
these
that you gave me.
documents and actually get to the links, but I won't, bore you with going through 9 links. What I will tell you is that you can get into them, and if you can't click into them, you can always copy, paste it into your browser, and read the stories. Wholeheartedly, each one of the stories actually reflects that the sense of police morale around the country is relatively low. I will tell you from what I've seen here in the city of Waterloo that our folks are working really, really hard. And despite the challenges that we face and the challenges that every police department faces around the country, our folks are pulling together and doing the very best job that you can possibly expect, as is evidenced in the monthly reports that I give everyone in council that summarizes the great work that each and every officer is doing in the department. So let's go into another undisputed truth about Waterloo Police Department staffing. What you'll see is a list of folks from June 1st, which is my first day of official work of last year, until present. Each person listed on this slide are people that resigned, retired, or retired due to some type of disability. Mind you, people that retire do so because they can choose to retire. It is an earned benefit. It is something that is cyclical. And what do I mean by that? Well, every 25 years or so,
Send it to him.
in most industries, you have a turnover. And that mass turnover is because of mass hirings that have happened years ago. So you meet that 25-year mark, 20 to 25-year mark, and people can arbitrarily exercise their right to retire. There are numerous people in that list that have, but I think it's been misrepresented in the media and to the media, and what I'd like to do is make a better representation of what the actuality is. And that is that 17 people have attrited this department since 6 of 2020, with 6/1 of 2020 was my first day of hire. 7 people were eligible to retire and exercise their right to retire. 4 employees left because of injury. That means that they could no longer perform their duties as a police officer. Therefore, they were forced to retire. Not forced by us, but forced by certifications throughout the state to retire and to move on to potentially another opportunity. And then we have 6 officers that have voluntarily resigned. The 6 officers that have volunteered to resign have taken other jobs outside of this police department, at another police department, at a police department. Well, one example is in Hawaii. Another example would be 2 of the people that exercise their right to retire have done so to take high income opportunities outside of police work. Again, reasons that you don't get insight into when you read an article or you read something that's mass produced that just is erroneous or factless.
This doesn't include civilian staff, though. 'Cause
No,
we're
it doesn't.
We're missing a civilian staff person off of this.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes. So here's another undisputed truth about our staffing. There's been 12 new hires since 6 of 2020. Go backwards. 17 separations, 12 new hires. Of those 12 new hires, 9 were rookie police officers. 2 were certified law enforcement officers who lateraled here, and 1 is pending lateral, and it's me. You have 3 officer vacancies that I inherited. 3. We can all do the math here. That's 8 vacancies since 9/7 of 2021. 8 total vacancies is what we have. We've been relatively fortunate that each one of our hiring processes, now accelerated hiring processes, I might add, have yielded as many viable candidates as it has. Again, our office, our department, our recruiters, our internal affairs staff doing backgrounds are doing the very best they can, as quickly as they can, to get through the applicants and to put the test on. Ms. Yuan, as you're aware of, at least civil service has been flexible with me and allowed me to now do back-to-back tests, which is something we weren't doing before, and to end the civil service test earlier so that we can start a new test and eventually put together a viable list of candidates when one expires, and I thank you for that. So 8 total vacancies today. 3 inherited. Again, when I walked in the door, there were 3. And 11 new hires. 12 new hires, excuse me. 17 employees that retired, 12 new hires. That is a fact. National attrition in policing is up overall in the nation about 45%. That is also a fact. The employees, I should say, earn the right to retire, as I said, and they can exercise that right when they have the opportunity to retire. The realities are that policing is a stressful business. We all understand that. We all understand that the last year has been tremendously difficult, but we still have folks here, mind you, that are working through that are still dedicated to this profession and to this job and to this city. And people actually do leave for what? More money. So our challenge is to recruit for diversity. We are a little less diverse than when I walked in day one. We lost Mr. Harrington, who, for years, mind you, has been a part of this department. His son is now a part of this department, but we do need to do a better job of working within our community to recruit from the community and to diversify. My hope and my prayer is that with the opening of our city and our nation, that I'll be able to get into more traditionally minority churches, to speak to people directly, and to meet at a level that ensures that we can, potentially grab more applicants of color throughout our city, and outside of our city, I should say. So becoming industry competitive is my number one concern. I do think that we have to take a good hard look at salaries. We have to look at the possibility of additional bonuses. The expanded living radius is something that we've already dealt with. Thank you to council. Our highest civil service testing frequency is something that we've already adapted and adjusted to. Lateral bonuses will be to be determined. Mr. Bozen was a proponent of that, and that is something we have to adopt. Technological improvements and improvements in our budget. Those budget shortfalls come in the form of training. The Generation Z applicant wants to know that they're a part of the community and that they'll receive the training and benefits that you would get elsewhere. We can be more competitive with increasing the amount of training that we afford our officers. And to a certain degree, some of the shifting of responsibilities and duties due to mental health services taking a turn and us going more towards a model that has a less police presence, or a lessened police presence on mental health scenes should help us free up a little more time that gives us an opportunity to train differently. And our neighborhood policing strategy. It's also very attractive to Generation Z, and it's something we can capitalize upon to package ourselves better and to brand ourselves as a department that is welcoming and a department that's a great place to work in. Part of the, what you'll see when you receive the document is that we took a look at staffing strategies, and we used at least 3 different equations to determine where we possibly or potentially should be with staffing. Now, I realize that staffing augmentation does not happen overnight. I realize that it does not happen without cost. But when you look at purely by workload, what the need is, the International City Management Association, we use their budget, their strategy for determining the number of police officers in communities of our size, and it would beget an additional 60 police officers, that's 59.69 officers. Our workload formula that we used internally, we came up with about 42.62 or 42 additional police officers. That is a lot of workload, and that workload didn't happen when, Mr. Morrissey? It didn't happen overnight, right? None of this happened overnight. So workload is something that we have to take a serious look at, and that may beget you saying, hey, Chief, I don't trust your math. We need to do a staffing study. I welcome it because I feel like the reduced number of police officers that we have targeted at 34 officers, 2 sergeants, and 1 lieutenant over 10 years would bring us up to date and staffed appropriate. That's a stratified 10-year approach at adding 34 police officers and supervision to bring supervision within their appropriate span of control over 10 years. I believe that a 10-hour shift, which you're proposing to members of the union, would work better and be a more attractive model to use to bring in police officers from other cities and to attract younger police officers who do value their time off as much as anyone else, but even more so Generation Z. And a reallocation of wards and beats is necessary and underway.
Quick question, sir. How do we fund 40 more officers?
Well,
We're maxed out at our 810 levy now. I mean, where would we have to cut within the city to make that work?
I am not privy to where to cut elsewhere in the city. I think that's more of a decision for the mayor and council to think about what other city departments or city endeavors that we would cut. However, the reality is, when you look at workload and we look at morale in policing, the first thing that people point to is how much workload is each individual officer taking on. And when you look at the workload that each officer is taking on, they are taking on a greater degree of work than they have done in the past. And this, again, didn't happen overnight.
I agree, sir. And I like the 4 10-hour days and the 3 off because it saves us 8 hours per week vacation. Right now, an officer works 6 and 3. You gets 48 hours vacation for every week's vacation that
Absolutely.
he takes. This would allow him only 40 hours
Yes, sir.
for a week's vacation. It would have more people on the street because a guy takes a week's vacation. Now he's off 9 days in a row.
Yes, sir.
A guy takes a week's vacation. Under this plan, he's off 7 days in a row.
See, you've done some staffing study research.
But on a 4 and 3 schedule, I'd hate to be that junior officer that his only days off are Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays of each week.
You know, Mr. Rosen, the stark reality is that right now our junior officers are taking the brunt of it
I agree.
every
There's no way to
single
get around
day,
it, sir.
which is why the allocation of staffing overall needs to increase. It still would fall upon junior officers, but the window for the officers of some tenure, 2, 3, 5 years, that work on our second shift and our third shift would now be able to get that time off that they don't get now.
I do see the cost savings at least on vacation time, but right now, like I say, right now that's on a 6 and 3. Every week's vacation is 48 hours.
What we can do, and I can promise you that that is not a part of this plan. I did not put it in there, but we have several proposed schedules, drafted schedules in that 10-hour shift model that have a variety of benefits with the staffing that we have now. It's an immediate Band-Aid approach to giving these guys a little more disposable time off and being sensitive to the fact that they are working an inordinate amount of hours. We're within FLSA standards. However, we are teetering the line, and the officers definitely need, a break.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. And thank you for bringing up the particulars, because I wouldn't have gone that deep into it had you not asked the question. So, the focus group information that I brought forth earlier, we talked about meeting with officers. I've met with police officers in this department. I've sat down with officers anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour and a half. And each officer had an opportunity to sit down and talk to me, and there was no time limit placed upon the conversations. There was no limit to the conversation that we had. It could have been door open, door closed. I gave officers, supervisors, everyone that option. I incorporated that feedback into creating the SMART goals, creating the action items that we have here, and then you will see. I'll just pass this book around and you can see some of the things that we find. Draft. It is marked draft, but it gives you an idea when you get midway through the book of the 229 different goals and action items that we're seeking to achieve in this department. I'd say 229 more than we had in the last 10 years. We created the new mission, vision, goals, core values, and guiding principles of the organization based upon feedback. We centered those things around sanctity of life and treating people with decency and respect. And with that brainstorming, with that process, it's a great process that has to be repeated at least every year and refreshed to make sure we stay in tune with not only the needs of the police officers at the police officer level, but the needs of the community as well, and the needs of council. We created 4 organizational pillars based upon all of the feedback that was received. That means, again, not to be redundant, actually talking with people and getting that feedback and use these to strategize, well, what are the overall pillars that we need to form our strategic plan around? And these are the 4 that we came up with: professionalism and organizational excellence, community engagement and partnerships, operational improvements and data-driven metrics, and technology and infrastructure expansion. I will tell you that in most departments that I've been in, these have been the 4 models that most have come up with. It doesn't matter what group of people you bring together. When we talk about policing, these are all items that are touch points for police departments. So our first pillar, in this department, we need to look at a culture of mutual respect within the police department. What does that do? It improves morale. This is feedback we've gotten from people within the department and outside of it. A culture of mutual respect within the department. The interactions between us and the community, how does that improve morale? It's the positive feedback that the officers get. It's the feedback that I give you, showing the great jobs that officers do, the emails that I get, sharing those things with officers. Improves the morale within the police department. We continuously build upon the populations in Waterloo to create and expand the future recruiting base. I spoke to that. What do I have to do better? Well, I have to get into these community organizations that haven't met for a year. I have to go into churches and discuss with them the importance of having people representative of this community representing our community, representing the city of Waterloo and its police departments everywhere, all parts of the city. The population within the Waterloo Police Department, again, are we representative of the community that we serve? We are not. We have not been, and I would, without guessing on a term, I would say the department probably has never been truly reflective of the community that it serves. Recruiting, hiring, and promoting and retaining the best fit candidates. Oh, who's your best fit candidates? They're the people that want to be here, that are still here working every single day, very hard, as we've already discussed, taking extra shifts every week because of vacancies that we have and that we have had since I walked in the door. We have a dedicated police department, a group of folks that work tirelessly and silently almost every day to do the best job that they possibly can. And by expanding our model here, by saying to everyone in the community that this is something that we can strive to be, we can strive to be a police officer in Waterloo. It is a noble profession. These are people that give back to the community. These are folks that care about our community. We'll be a better police department. We will, with the change in mission, vision, value, and ethics, we're definitely seeing a change. We're seeing more cooperation from citizens when we have crimes. We're seeing people calling us back and people working with us to solve crimes. That is a sign that we're not being seen as an outside or an imposing force. We're being seen as part of the community. So the organizational structure has to be representative of, it has to be flexible and adaptable enough, I should say, to be able to meet our needs. But again, in meeting our needs, we can meet our needs with wants, or we can meet our needs with things that this department absolutely needs to move forward to improve morale. So I think what you'll see here are more things that are actual needs that we have to attend to move forward, and that's part of the 200 and some odd goals and action items that we presented today. Our second pillar, community engagement and partnerships. We can, by promoting better interactions with members of the community, that guardian mentality and that positive nature of our interactions, having our MPOs go to schools and see people like Mr. Grider, and engage in community events, be part of the NPO program and engage community partners. That will expand the not only the amount of contact we have with people in a non-confrontational manner, but it builds the rapport necessary to change the way we're seen as officers within the city. It improves our external communication, it enhances the sense of partnership that we have. It reduces crime because we're proactively meeting with people, going into the community meetings and talking to them about how do you protect yourself or harden yourself against crime. And we should have the disposable time to be able to meet community members and to be able to have these discussions so that they're not victimized by crime. We want to increase the number of volunteers that we have in the reserve program. Joe and I were just talking. We have 12 reserves currently. I mean, we could stand to help ourselves with that number of police officers, myself and Mr. Bozen were just discussing, by recruiting more people that are willing to volunteer their time and become reserves. That's an option. And we have to continue to be innovative, continue to use our community policing presence to engage the community, to build legitimacy, and to build trust. Our third pillar, reduce solving, preventing crimes, and publishing our stats. We need to make sure that our statistical information not only gets disseminated within the department, but it needs to be published on our website. That is something that needs to be done in a professional, condensed manner that any citizen will be able to interpret and to understand. We're working on it. Our new system that we're purchasing with the county has a component called a mega dashboard. A mega dashboard I've used in other cities, and it provides not only the police officer up-to-date statistical data that they can use to make data-driven decisions on how they police the area and beat neighborhood that they are working in, but it also can allow a citizen to put their address in, look at the crimes that have happened around their homes, and to read very abbreviated reports of what happened, but it informs the community, helps them harden themselves. And that is, we're looking at May of this year for a kickoff for Omega Dashboard. That expands our intelligence-led policing. We're committing to community-oriented and 21st century policing, as you'll see a little later. Internal communication, giving officers that access at the touch of a button inside your computer that gives them access to what happened just the last shift, 3 shifts ago, 3 weeks ago, is going to enable them, give them a little more to work with as a police officer. And that is, again, contained within that Omega Dashboard upgrade. Our annual reevaluation of wards, grids, beats, and shifts, that is underway. I've spoken to that. To identify and prioritize the highest funding needs of the department. Well, that comes from the department, through the department, and is, edified in the strategic plan and the goals and action plans. We need to promote crime prevention programs, to prioritize officer wellness. You'll see a section on that a little later, and to measure employee satisfaction and to address issues promptly. These are all morale boosts. These are things that we process within our police department and prioritize and have a place in this plan. Our last pillar, technology development, infrastructure expansion. I know some of the things we just talked about may seem like they all tie back to technology anyway, but this is a little deeper, and it's looking at all of our outdated equipment and technology. You all have taken a step in that direction by moving us toward the Axon body cam and body-worn camera, in-car camera systems. That has helped upgrade that upgraded system as part of a movement into a process now that we can, if something happens, answer the community in short order and quell any questions that may surround the police-related incident. So the systems and solutions that our investigators use, we're working on other procurements of technology that will make it easier for our detectives to mine data and pull information that will help them with investigations, hopefully shortening the time that it takes to solve some of the crimes that we've experienced in our community. We needed a program or some structure as it relates to how are we looking at our infrastructure within the department? How are we selecting and ordering the things that are necessary to make our workplace better? We needed paint. We needed to conduct the 3rd floor renovation. There are things that we've done that, quite frankly, we knew we needed to do for some years that just happened over the last year. We've expanded, the sections in the department where officers can work in the process of procuring new computers. One of Joe's goals, for example, is working in the community to have satellite locations, whether they be in fire stations or some community office where an officer can access computer equipment, go online securely and safely, and be able to do some of their reporting that they would traditionally do inside headquarters. A change that I made where officers were coming in, and we would have 5 or 6 or 7 officers coming inside the type of report. We no longer can afford to have that happen, and I've directed the officers to do that work out on the street. This would give us an opportunity, and I'm just using it as an example, to go within your own beat, whether it's in Mr. Morris's neighborhood on 4th Street somewhere, and to go into a location, park your car outside of that very public location, and go type a report out. That gives the officer embedded, I like to say it's, your slice of God's green earth that you're responsible for every day. And instead of pulling an officer from one end of the city to another end of the city, we've really taken a hard look at making sure that the beats and the beat concept is something that we adhere to. And part of adhering to it is making sure that the officer that's assigned to your area actually can complete all their work in the community that we put them in and assign them to. Right now, they can do it within the car, but we would like them to actually go inside of a location that's public, have interactions with members of the community, and be able to do their work comfortably within the beat of the ward. The police facilities, whether it's paint, whether it's a leak that's going on for 20 years, we've addressed internal infrastructure problems. Now, can I say that things are perfect? I would certainly never say so. But I will tell you this, an officer's time, the only officers who the majority of their time are spent or should be spent inside working on things would be our command staff members, our upper command staff members who are working on global projects. The officers, yes, they may need to come in and use the bathroom. They may need to come in because they'd like to have lunch here, but I would encourage them to have lunch on their beats. I also, try to make it possible because we've assigned supervisors to go out. When they were once seated downstairs in the command central station that we have downstairs, that was one body that is one more body that should be out on the street. So we've changed that. So we're making the adjustments that needed to be made as we go to make it more possible for officers to have more flexible time in places outside of a police car. However, I think we made that a 2-year plan to get all of the infrastructure into places within our community, and it's something that we'll have to work on. But there's a definite need to keep officers in the areas that they serve and to make sure that they are familiar with everyone in the community in these areas.
So, Chief, not to interrupt you, sir, but so when an officer lives out of town and can't go home for lunch, or during first, second, or third shift that brings their lunch, you're asking them to eat in their car, not come back to the station. Is that correct?
I have not yet said that you cannot come back to the station for lunch. We would rather the officers stay on their beat and eat somewhere within their beat.
Okay.
Yes.
And I do appreciate the fact that you're looking for places throughout the community to set up satellite locations for them to do their report, because I challenge anybody on staff to put their computer at a 45-degree angle, lock their chair, and then type all day long like this, and that's what they're doing in their cars.
And that's where technology comes in.
Well, I know about the dictating the reports, but we got to get them to do that.
You're right.
And in order for this system to be accurate, they have to do that in order to recognize the vernacular and vocabulary from that officer.
Yes,
so
indeed.
The reports are typed correctly.
Incredibly accurate. And, I would love to give counsel an opportunity to speak into those dictation devices so you have an understanding of how accurate this technology is. It's very accurate. It trains really quickly. It has been a struggle to get people to utilize it, but it's a struggle to get, when you first get body cams, to get people to use that. I mean, it's, we're making strides and we're making the kind of changes that set us up for long-term success. And the investment that was made was a good one. And you will see long-term efficiencies and success because of it. So I would like to give you guys the opportunity to use some of that. It's not like dragonware or software that can be really inaccurate. It is surprisingly accurate for the terms that some people use out in the street that may not be in our dictionary.
Chief,
Yes.
I'm quite concerned, as well as Mr. Boson, about all of this stuff going on in the cars. We don't have safe locations for them. They know that it's frowned upon to come into the
Let me correct you. Safe locations. I would like to understand what you mean.
locations so that they can get out of their car once in a while and have their lunch you know what I mean?
I don't, because this city's safe, ma'am. And if you can't get out of your car as a police officer and feel as if you're safe, I have a problem with that. That would be an issue.
You just mentioned that you're looking for locations for them. Yes, well, we don't have those in place yet. So that leaves them the option of their car because they know that it is frowned upon to come back to the station. Now, we also know that across the nation, assassinations of officers occur when they are in their car.
How many?
I don't know that number. Perhaps you could share with me. I also know this. There's a feeling of nervousness amongst some of the officers when they don't have a moment to go someplace that they know is safe and relax for the time it takes to eat their lunch or to write their reports.
I appreciate that concern,
To be stuck in a car.
And I know that stuck in the car is first of all, no officer should ever be stuck in the car. For some reason, in the past, I think you'd agree that removing the officer's ability to take their laptop out of their car and to use it in a mobile fashion was a mistake, because officers had the ability to remove their laptops from the harness within the car and to go into people's homes or to go into other locations that they think might be a tactical advantage and to use their laptops. prior to me getting here, that was changed. I don't understand why, because I agree with you. It's uncomfortable. As somebody that has experienced back issues and been a police officer for 30 years, I'd have to agree. Probably really is uncomfortable. However, we've given them all of that access, and one of the things that we're looking at now is taking those laptops, giving them the opportunity to pick the laptop up and move it. A subtle change, think about this, a subtle change that was made some time ago has led now to a complaint that the chief doesn't like or frowns upon people leaving their vehicles. Incredible. I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, wasn't it also said that they should use bathrooms out in their wards, in their areas? And not try not to
I will
come
tell
in?
you this, I run the police department and I've run several. The impotence of police work is to ensure that we have the safety of the community at heart. I want officers to feel safe at all times, but we put officers in unsafe situations. And every door they knock on, every response that they have is a potentially unsafe situation. Just because they have a uniform on can be a potentially unsafe situation.
Shouldn't
I
be a
think
minute-
with the changes that I've already proposed and discussed, that you would agree that what I've talked about is allowing them the ability to go backwards and take that laptop out of the car, something that was taken from them before I got here, and allow them the flexibility to do that again. So I'm speaking the same language, although what I'm also responsible for is to ensure that we're able to respond within our community and to do so in the most efficient and effective manner possible. And if we didn't do that, you'd be saying, Chief, our responses they're just not fast enough. They're just not, why is it that it took so long? Or why was everybody inside the police department? Which has been a problem. When you have 4 or 5 or 6 officers inside the police department at one time, it's something that has been problematic, and I had to change. So there's a balance that has to be struck, and that balance comes with making technological improvements that allow me to say, okay, take your laptop. You can work on it at your home. If you live in the city, you can work on it on your lunch break. You can take it wherever you need to take it. We're being flexible, we're being adaptable, and we're reversing bad past practices. All right. In the booklet that was presented, you'll see goals and action items. This is the legend for that goal and action item section. It tells you what went into our thought process and how the goals and action items link. You'll see that of the 229 goals, everyone has a number. They're all SMART goals that include a description of what that goal is and a measurement. It assigns what command staff member is responsible for each goal. It gives you a timeline. It gives you the funding strategy or source. Some of the things are not funded. They don't necessarily need to be particularly funded. They just need to be changed. You'll see that the category has to align with some overall city strategy, city budget strategy. And the pillars, you'll see the alignment by number with the pillars. So it's a comprehensive document that links to other things within the document that all work in the framework on feedback that we received internally and externally. Let's go to 2015 and talk about some of the older items that were left, as I put it, undone. Our President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing items that have been out for a little while, our 2015 PERF report, and the Department of Justice's report that were probably placed into all the council members' hands at that time. Our strategic plan aligns with each one of those properties or those items that were discussed within that report. You'll see that in our pillars and what we're adopting as goals and action plan items, you'll see that every one of those are met. If not, haven't already been met up to this time, are things that will be. And I would hearken to say, Joe, the majority of them. I mean, there were 30, I think there's 30. There were 13 of the 30 that were adopted since 2015. I'd say 29 of the 30, if not 30 of 30, are either adopted fully or something that's in progress that we're waiting to pay for. Yes, sir.
Do you have any explanation, not by your
Yes, sir.
since you've been here, but why when we have a 2015 PERF report and a Department of Justice COPS report that we to some of these recommendations that we've had for, I mean, we're talking, 5.5, 6 years since this came out.
Yes, sir. I mean, I was shocked. Some of the things are as easy as making policy changes that I made when I first got here that I saw as easy fixes to be able to meet the expectations of these reports. I can only say this, if judging by some of the, feedback that I've seen, read, or heard, there was a resistance to doing things that angered the troops or that made the troops feel uneasy. Our job is not just to take care of the troops. That's part of our job. The morale, the making sure that they have the things that they need to get their jobs done, and sometimes telling them the things that they have to do to get the job done. That's our responsibility as command staff members and as leaders. And, a lot of times you're going to hear things you don't like to hear, but that doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do and it's not the change to make. And for that study to be something that we've invited people into this agency to do and to not implement, it's reprehensible.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So, we've talked about some of this. Those things languished. Here are some examples. Updates in the use of force policy. Some of the stuff was partially completed in 2016. A year later, the city paid huge settlements in regards to many of these items that could have and should have been corrected over the last 10 years. As a police chief that's been, first of all, I've been a police chief since I was in my 30s. In 4 different jurisdictions now as chief. These aren't new national narratives. They aren't new changes. They're things that have been around for a long time. And we can't wait for others sometimes to tell us what we need to change. We have to be involved in national conversations. We have to be around the table with leaders, in the top 50 cities in the United States and have difficult conversations about what we have to do and how our departments in general have to adapt and to change. And it takes intestinal fortitude and courage to make changes that people aren't going to like. But that's one of the burdens of being a leader and demonstrating leadership. So the things you're saying here and the changes that we've made that seem like as you're reading them, and I can tell by the looks of your faces, you're saying these are such easy changes to make. Well, these are changes that you endorsed after we made them. These are things that you said and you proactively said, we're never going to fall behind again. And you all put that proclamation together to your credit to ensure that this department doesn't fall behind any further than we already were. So thank you for that. Thank you from our officers because you've kept a lot of people out of trouble. As you look at this, the new policies that we put in place, some policies that were even, wordsmithing changes, just things that matter to members of the community and things that will keep us out of federal court are things that are done now. And I won't stay on this any longer. I will stay on some of the other things we filled in the blanks on. And since I've been here, and that is adopting critical decision-making and use of force situations and critical incidents, authorizing the duty to intervene clause. All of these sound remarkably like a lot of can't wait things, but they were. And they were things, again, to your credit, that you said we had to have in action and affirmed in council doctrine for this department. And as you go down the list, banning chokeholds, adding policies that address improper training, inadequate investigations, and poor leadership. These were highlighted in the report. I'm at a loss for words as to why it wouldn't have been moved on. So I'll move off of this for the sake of everybody's time. These are other examples of things in that report that we filled in the blanks on. We've deputized our VCAT people as U.S. Marshals. We've had them work now in concert with the detective division. They were in patrol. We had an information gap that was expanding. And since then, they've worked seamlessly, closed an inordinate amount of gun cases, and are bringing people to justice in the city that are toting firearms, selling firearms, or straw purchasing firearms. Our work assignments that officers have within beats and wards. When I first got here, an officer could choose where they wanted to work, what part of the city they wanted to work in. It wasn't a popular decision, but a decision I made was that, no, your supervisor decides where you work. You can bid on your times of work, and you can bid on other things, but you can't take I was not usurping or further usurping the authority of my supervisors and my command staff by allowing officers to say, hey, I don't want to work on the east side, I want to work here. Well, that's not how a police department should or does operate anymore here in Waterloo. We instituted the NPO program, which is potentially the biggest thing ever that we've seen. The cooperation enhancements are things that I've already spoken to. Collaborating with the school district and the Boys and Girls Club, Joe's in charge of that. He is going to work on our Explorers program. Our Explorer program should be a feeder system into recruiting for diversity and recruiting for people within this city at our high schools that are interested in becoming police officers. Our racial profiling reporting, our IED reporting, our IED changes, these are all things that weren't done that are now. We have mandatory IED reporting where we're actually giving it a number, investigating it, and proving to the community that we actually investigate things. And you know what? It doesn't make the community happy sometimes, but that's okay, right? Because we're taking, every one of their complaints and we're actually investigating it, something that wasn't being done before. It's a small step in the eyes of some, and a huge step when you have to tell an officer you're investigating a complaint that we know that a video camera, one of our improved cameras, can tell us didn't happen. But you know what? We're justifying to the community that we're legitimate. We're legitimate because whether it comes to our attention by proxy, comes to our attention directly through the community or through the person that was affected, we're investigating those complaints. That's a huge, huge difference in the way we do business today. Moving along, there's so many more things here. I want to give you time to ask follow-up questions. So I'd ask that if you want to go through just a little further, these are some other changes on here that I write. Lower some of the taxpayer burden, and this is worth going through. Insurance premiums for the city have lowered some. That has a lot to do. We received direct feedback that our police department and the changes and the purchases that council has authorized us to make had a direct result in how we were seen as insurable by insurance companies. That is huge, and you all deserve kudos for that. Our settlement payouts, the reason why we haven't had anything, I think it has a lot to do with some of the new policies and procedures, and sometimes we save people from themselves, and I think we're seeing the result of that. We had no findings of excessive force. We've had financial support from members of the community. Thousands of dollars donated for training. It's not perfect. It's not enough. I see Mr. Morrissey looking at me. It's not enough, but it is a difference, and it's a different feeling when the community is saying, hey, we know you need this. How can we help? The community stepping in and donating $40,000, $50,000 more than that. I mean, that says a lot about the involvement that you all have in the community and the enhanced involvement that we do. Our supervisors have, this is a really critical section. I don't want to scoot over this. And supervisors in this department need additional training. I have a program, a career development program that is enacted, and we are working on to get them the training that they need. A supervisor that is promoted within this department receives no mandatory supervisory training. You are in essence going out. You're moving from patrol officer to supervisor, sometimes with people that you worked with before, and now expected to tell them what to do without any guidance. I've changed it. That has been far too long, and I think we'd all agree, something that we should have tended to a long time ago. Our use of force, racial profiling, and everything are something that may be hard to swallow for some, but in the truest sense of transparency is something we'll continue doing every year. Our Consolidated Dispatch Center cost reduction, the mayor and I work together to lower the amount of money that the city of Waterloo pays, and our Consolidated dispatch is something that was we were being overcharged for years, and we made a dent in that. And council, as it closes out, you receive updates. There's a list of significant first-year accomplishments. Sounds like a lot, but I probably missed a lot. Joe will kick me for it later. But you guys can go back through this at your leisure, take a look at it, and please ask questions. If you have any clarifying questions that you can send me that may help other people to understand, I'll be more than happy to do so. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and just again back to when we're going to get a copy. I know our communications director is working with it. Do you think this is something we'll have within the next week or two, or what do you think?
The communications director has promised me, and I don't want to make any promises we can't keep, but she said as long as we could get her our corrected versions tomorrow, that she'd be able to potentially get that printed and bound by the end of the week in your hands.
That's something I look forward to.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor. So first, Chief, I'd like to thank you, your command staff, and all of our officers. I know that public service is difficult, and what you all do is even more difficult. How are you finding, I'm very curious about the neighborhood beat program, as well as the liaison positions. What have you found has been working there? What changes have you found that you needed to make midstream, or possibly analyze over the longer term on those?
The biggest change and the biggest thing is the reporting back up through the chain of command. I was having the officers go in and do individual reports at the end of the month, and we actually changed that so that they make the report entries into a centralized database so that I'm going to use X, Y, and Z. Officer X works first shift, Officer Y works second, Officer Z works third. They can go in under that same beat, under that month, write all of the things that they did right in there, and they're able to see each other's feedback on that same beat. Their internal communication for this generation, as you probably know in the classroom, is different. So they found it to be much more useful in using a centralized database that they could go in and search and actually see what the other people have been writing, as opposed to, in passing, having conversations. That's been the most huge thing. The most huge benefit of it all, I think, has been, just in areas in a community where we traditionally didn't get help, or we traditionally didn't get anyone to step forward and say, and shake the tree for information, we're getting that. And that's coming because officers are trying. They're going in, they're not being wholly resistant to to getting out of the car and having a conversation with people. And that will benefit us in the long run, because we're seeing, again, more members of the community that are engaged and active, and that will expect a lot more from each one of the individual officers, which I hope they do.
I just had
John?
We'll go Mrs. Klein, then we'll go Mr. Morris.
Chief, at the beginning, you worked through the morale issue, but we have had lately communication from 3 former chiefs in a letter to the editor, or an editorial.
It's not my place to have conversation about a letter to an editor in this.
It's about morale, though, and it's about the depth of the
what
low
I've done is
morale
and
right
what
now.
I've done is address morale issues at each point. We have several issues you can go to, and you can see that the morale issue is something that was either started during the time that other people worked here and led this department, and changes were never made. And for lack of a better way of putting it, it's easy to cast stones when you've been out of the business or not had the global sort of look at the business that some others have had.
Well, speaking
And
of,
I think
speaking
that
of being in the business, sir,
I think what we need to do
what about the
is
morale survey that was sent to the city council that included working police officers and retired police officers? We all received it here. 3 of us responded to it.
So,
and
I don't understand how that's germane to my presentation.
It spoke about the desperate morale problem.
Well,
But Chief, let's do this, because it's she wants to speak to a survey that was done outside the city by a group that personally is a political group that you personally have worked with from the beginning, according to emails that I received. So if we want to talk about officer morale, You just had a laid out vision of what's happening, what's going to take place. You had an entire year of accomplishments. Calling out and doing those things like right now is not advantageous to the officers.
I would have thought that survey would have been shared.
Was it shared?
Ooh.
If there's anything that's germane to the presentation that we just seen, let's continue to move that way. Mr. Morrissey, Chief, we're done with that part.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Well, I have several things that I've written down here, Chief Fitzgerald.
Yes, sir.
And do you want to, I mean, can we just delay the meeting and everything until about 6:30?
Oh,
You know?
it's 5. It's 5.
No,
So
no,
if you
I
wanna
mean,
ask
that's how much time I would like to spend on this, Mr. Mayor.
I'm like,
Okay.
so if
I
so-
just want to say, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much, Chief Fitzgerald. When you started this position June 1st, things were sort of unraveling nationwide. And things are, at that point in time, they were very hot, very disputed. There was this, that, and the other. There were people coming at each other, all that kind of stuff, accusations, everything like that being made. Joe, anybody else in the Waterloo Police Department have a job to do as a department of the city of Waterloo that serves all the people in Waterloo. I have a different mentality than maybe the majority of people in this room right now. And my focus has always been, since I was young, on civil liberties. And so my questions that I wanted to ask, I wasn't going to interrupt you. It would be great, Mr. Mayor, if we could have a discussion with Chief Fitzgerald in public about some of these issues. Like I know last June I had brought up, I had a written presentation challenging the council to 12 different items. And the response to that and what happened ended up with the August 24th meeting, which resulted in some votes being taken and some other kinds of work session issues being relegated to the trash bin. And those were presented by me. But in saying that, Chief Fitzgerald, I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate this. I've come to know you a little bit better.
Yes, sir.
But I do want you to see that this city council person from Ward 3 believes in civil liberties, and it's that fine line between violation of a person's civil liberties, their rights to privacy, and being the guardians of your community. So I appreciate your, Joe, and everybody else's help with that, and the changes that you're making, I think, are one heck of a positive move forward. So thank you. And Mr. Mayor, I do request, if Chief Fitzgerald, if you could have him come back so that I could get into some of these other things a little bit more.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job, Chief.
Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Get back fast. Okay. Michelle, do you have your, good. Oh, you did. You already put it on. Good job. Thank you. and welcome to the Waterloo City Council Finance Committee meeting. Roll call, please.
Mr. Morrissey?
Here.
Mrs. Klein?
Here.
Mrs. Joy?
Here.
Motion to approve the agenda in the minutes
Second.
of August, 30th, excuse me, 2021.
And I second that as well.
Okay, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Would someone take the travel request, please?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mrs. Klein.
First travel request is for Paul Hudding, Leisure Services Director, to go to a class meeting, Iowa Park and Recreation Association Fall Workshop. Destination Burlington, Iowa, dates October 4th through the 6th of 2021, in an amount not to exceed $425. The second one is Officer Scarborough, Northrop, and Thomas. It's to a class meeting, Basic SWAT School. Destination Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Dates September 27th through October 1st, 2021, in an amount not to exceed $475. Number 3 is Sergeant Gersh and Officers Northrop, J. Eilers, and A. Eilers. Class meeting, Midwest Gang Investigators Association Conference. Destination Dubuque, Iowa. Date September 19th through the 22nd of 2021, in an amount not to exceed $2,320. The fourth is Lieutenants McClelland, Fangman, and Bose. It's for a class meeting, Enhanced Force Investigation. Destination, Iowa City, Iowa. Dates September 14th through the 16th of 2021, in an amount not to exceed $185. And finally, number 5 is Forrest Graves, Brad Manal, John Hyman, Jesse Garrity, and Andy Bedard, Sewer Department. Class meeting, Water Environment Federation Technical Education and Conference. Destination, Chicago, Illinois, October 18th through the 20th of 2021, in an amount not to exceed $2,229.50.
Second.
Discussion.
Yes,
Yes,
Madam
Mr.
Chair.
Morrissey.
Yeah, I just had a brief conversation with the chief and with the Major Leibold, and number 3 and number 4, I looked at those and I just had some questions about, and I will vote for those, but I would just like to make note, and I would ask the chief if he could look at those, or Joe or Dave Malis, whoever, to see if they are correct the way that they are written, because the dollar amounts seems, they don't add up to me, quite frankly. So,
Yes. Chief, do you want to address those?
I
please?
do, and I just thought of something. Mr. Morrissey brings a great point up. I'm sure that some are offset by grant funding. Maybe what we should do is add a portion underneath, if Michelle was amenable, to just say what portion thereof is not, coming from city budget funds, or coming from grant funds. I think that would help
And
clarify.
would that maybe address the reason between 3 and 4?
I believe so, but I don't
Just
want to
funded with grant.
misspeak. I'd rather just I'd rather, if you're willing to approve, you approve, and we have plenty of time here. It's September the 27th on 1, and I can come back and let you know what portion thereof in grant funding offset that cost.
Perfect. Michelle?
We need the total cost approved, so if they submit something to me that doesn't add up, which appears they did, that amount needs to be corrected.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can approve it now, we can amend it later if we find there's to be a change, can we not?
Yes.
Okay. Are you willing to do that,
yes,
Mr. Morrissey?
yes.
Okay, any other discussion? Then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Would somebody take the pre-authorization and the budget line items?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Morrissey.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the following pre-authorizations expending over $2,500. First is Leisure Services, the amount and estimated shipping and handling, $2,657.50 for flag football shirts for participants. Next is Leisure Services with the amount and estimated shipping and handling not to exceed $23,000 for replacement of Young Arena ice system, compressor number 1 motor, starter, bridge, CPU, electrical components. Next is MIS Department with the amount and estimated shipping and handling, $2,600 for technical support package, block of 20 hours for geographic information system or GIS related incidents. and in budget line items to be amended. First, to approve the project budget for the highway safety grant funded with federal funds passed through the state of Iowa of $3,000 to be used for traffic safety enforcement activities as submitted by the police department. Next is approve the project budget for funds received from the Otto Schoitz Foundation in the amount of $5,000 to be used for the University of Iowa projects as submitted by the finance department. Next is approve the carryover project budget amendment for the Community Development Block Grant CARES funds of $522,046 as submitted by the Community Development Department. Next is approve the project budget to provide professional services for the implementation of the fiscal year 2022 Riverfront Renaissance Plan with Vanderwall and Associates in the amount of $72,000 as submitted by the Planning and Zoning Department. And next, finally, is to approve the project budget for the fiscal year 2022 4th Street Bridge and Dam Lighting Project, contract number 1054, with a cost of $44,900, funded with donations as submitted by the engineering department.
Would you also take the other committee business? I'm sorry, I failed to add.
And last is to approve a refund request in the amount of $50.24 for garbage collection fees billed in error for wrong size garbage cart for property located at 123 Dearborn Avenue.
Second.
Discussion.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Morrissey.
Yes, if I could ask, is Noel here? Oh, okay. On item number 12, Noel, it's about the fiscal year 2022 River Renaissance Plan with Vanderwall and Associates for $72,000. And we have brought up, this is probably the third year at least that we have brought up, is this going to include areas that serve on the north side of the river as well?
Yes, it will.
It will.
Yep. Yeah, there's a list of activities they'll be looking at. Sorry, Noel Anderson, Community Planning Development Director. There's a list of activities they'll be looking at in the contract that'll talk about the areas on both sides of the river, as well as kind of some of the surrounding neighborhoods like Walnut, Church Row, Franklin Gateway. So we'll be looking at expanding that scope to make some complementary development happen in and around downtown.
Do you know when we might be receiving that, Noel?
I apologize. I thought maybe it was attached with this, so we'll get it to you right away.
Okay, thanks.
I think we'd all like to see that. No,
Sure.
Good, thank you. Any other questions? Okay.
No, Madam Chair.
No. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, under bills payment, as in the bills payment section, for September 7th, 2021, in the amount of $2,538,112.12. Move to receive, place on file, and forward to the full council.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion
Thank
to
you.
adjourn.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.